Most people think humiliation happens all at once, like a slap, like somebody screaming in your face in public, like getting fired in front of your co-workers. But for Andre Wallace, humiliation came slowly. It came through silence, through little smirks, through being treated like a guest in his own home. And by the time his wife's new man showed up at his driveway with 3 oversized dudes standing behind him like backup dancers for a street war, Andre had already spent months pretending not to notice his life falling apart. The crazy part, none of them knew who Andre used to be. Before we get into this story about pride, betrayal, and the dangerous mistake people make when they confuse kindness for weakness, don't forget to subscribe to Secret Tales. The first thing Andre noticed that morning was the smell of somebody else's cologne in his kitchen. Not expensive cologne either. Strong, loud, the kind sold in glossy black bottles with names like Dominance or Alpha Heat. He stood still beside the sink while the coffee machine dripped slowly into his mug. His wife, Renee, walked into the kitchen, wearing silk pajamas and scrolling through her phone like he wasn't even there. "Morning," Andre said quietly. She barely looked up. That hurt more than yelling would have. 16 years together, and now she talked to him like a customer at the DMV. Outside, the suburban Texas neighborhood was already waking up. Lawn sprinklers clicked across fresh grass. Somebody down the street played old Anita Baker through open garage speakers while washing a pickup truck. Everything looked peaceful. But inside that house, the air felt rotten. Andre leaned against the counter, watching Renee type furiously on her phone. "You coming to Jalen's game tonight?" he asked. She sighed dramatically. "I told you already. I got plans." "Plans with who?" That finally made her look up. The irritation in her eyes hit harder than the words. "Why you acting brand new lately?" Andre stared at her for a second, because deep down he already knew. He just needed her to say it. But Renee had mastered something dangerous over the past year, making him feel crazy for noticing obvious things. "You barely home anymore," he said carefully. "You don't talk to me. You don't even look at me." She laughed under her breath. "You want honesty?" Andre nodded slowly. "You stopped being ambitious a long time ago." There it was. Not yelling, not cheating accusations, not drama, disrespect, the kind that builds brick by brick until a marriage becomes a funeral with bills attached. Andre looked down into his coffee. 6 years earlier, he'd retired from the Navy after multiple classified deployments he never talked about. He came home with damaged knees, chronic insomnia, and a nervous system that still reacted to sudden sounds like incoming danger. But instead of resting, he poured himself into family life, coaching football, helping Jalen with homework, fixing things around the house, trying to become normal again. The problem was, normal felt weak to people who only respected noise. And lately, Renee had become obsessed with appearances, luxury restaurants, VIP sections, designer bags they couldn't afford. She spent hours on social media watching couples who looked rich, glamorous, untouchable. Meanwhile, Andre drove a paid-off truck and wore plain white T-shirts from Target. To Renee, that made him invisible. "You know what your problem is?" she continued. "You too comfortable?" Andre looked at her calmly. "And your problem?" She crossed her arms. "You stopped being a man people respect." That sentence stayed in the air, heavy, ugly, cruel. Andre could have responded 100 different ways. Instead, he picked up his coffee and walked toward the back patio. Because one thing military training taught him was this: the loudest person usually loses control first. Their son Jalen was 16 and smart enough to notice the tension. That evening, after basketball practice, he climbed into Andre's truck and tossed his gym bag in the back seat. "You and Mom fighting again?" Andre kept his eyes on the road. "Nah." Jalen gave him a look. "Dad, come on." Andre smiled faintly. "You got too observant." "I got ears." They drove in silence for a minute through their Frisco neighborhood, passing oversized houses, trimmed hedges, and couples pretending money solved emotional problems. Then Jalen spoke again. "You okay?" That question nearly broke Andre, because nobody had asked him that in a long time. Not really. "I'm all right," he said. But Jalen didn't believe him. "Teenagers know more than adults think. You know Mom been hanging around that dude Marcus, right?" Andre's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. There it was, a name, Marcus Hill. Andre had heard it before. A local nightclub owner with flashy jewelry, social media followers, and the kind of confidence that looked impressive until you examined it closely. "What you mean, hanging around?" Andre asked. Jalen hesitated. "I seen them together." Andre stayed quiet. "At her birthday dinner, too," Jalen added carefully. "Auntie Felicia said people been talking." People been talking. Funny how neighborhoods worked. Everybody notices everything. Nobody says anything directly. Andre nodded once. "Appreciate you telling me." Jalen looked out the window. "I just don't want nobody disrespecting you." Andre swallowed hard. That sentence meant more than the boy realized. Later that night, Andre sat alone in the garage with the lights off, just listening. That was something he'd learned overseas. Silence tells the truth, not words, not performances. Silence. And in silence, he finally admitted something to himself. His marriage was already over. Not because Renee stopped loving him, because she stopped respecting him. There's a difference, a dangerous one. At around 11:40 p.m., headlights swept across the garage window. Andre stayed still. Renee stepped out of a black Escalade wearing heels in one hand and laughing into her phone. Not drunk. Comfortable. That hurt worse. Andre watched from the darkness as she typed a message before walking inside. A few seconds later, her phone buzzed loudly on the kitchen counter. She forgot it. Andre stared at the screen from across the room. "Marcus, can't stop thinking about tonight." Andre closed his eyes. Not from heartbreak, from disappointment, because deep down he already knew. The next morning, Renee acted like nothing happened. That was the part Andre found almost impressive. The ability to betray somebody while still asking them to pass the syrup at breakfast. "You picking Jalen up today?" she asked casually. Andre looked at her. "You seeing Marcus?" The room froze. Jalen slowly looked down at his cereal. Renee's face hardened instantly. "You went through my phone? I asked you a question. You don't get to interrogate me." Andre nodded slowly. "So that's a yes." Renee slammed her fork down. "You know what? Maybe I am." Jalen looked shocked. Mom." "No," she snapped. "Your father want to play detective, let's be honest." Andre stayed calm, always calm. That calmness started irritating her even more. "You checked out of this marriage years ago," she continued. "You got no drive, no energy, no passion. You live like some old man waiting to die." Andre stared at her quietly. You done? Her eyes narrowed. That's it? That's all you got? Andre stood up slowly. I'm not arguing in front of my son. Then he walked away. But inside, something cold had started waking up. Marcus finally showed up 3 days later, Saturday afternoon. Bright sun. Perfect neighborhood. Kids riding bikes. Andre was washing his truck when a black Escalade rolled into the driveway like it owned the property. Music blasted through the speakers. Jalen looked out from the front window immediately. Renee came outside fast, pretending surprise that fooled nobody. And then Marcus stepped out. Black jeans, gold chain, tight black shirt. The type of man who practiced facial expressions in mirrors. 3 large men climbed out behind him. Not security, just intimidation with sneakers on. Marcus spread his arms dramatically. So this the husband? Andre shut off the water hose slowly. No fear, no anger, just observation. The 3 men stood behind Marcus with crossed arms, trying hard to look dangerous. Andre noticed details automatically. One limped slightly on his left leg. One kept adjusting his waistband nervously. One scanned too much. Untrained eyes always move too fast. Marcus walked closer with a grin. Renee told me you was soft. Renee stood near the Escalade looking uncomfortable now, because disrespect always feels entertaining until it becomes real. Andre dried his hands calmly. What exactly you doing at my house? Marcus laughed loudly for the audience. Nah, see, that's the problem right there. You talking like a substitute teacher. One of the men chuckled. Marcus stepped closer. I came here man to man. Andre looked him in the eyes. No, you came here with 3 dudes because you scared to come alone. That changed the energy instantly. One thing about insecure men, they hate accuracy. Marcus's smile faded slightly. You think this funny? No, Andre said calmly. I think it's sad. Renee jumped in quickly. Andre, stop. But Marcus raised a hand. Nah, let him talk. Andre looked at the 3 men again. Then back at Marcus. You bringing people to another man's house, trying to perform. Toughness in front of a woman? Marcus's jaw tightened. You got a slick mouth for somebody getting replaced. That word landed. Replaced. Jalen suddenly opened the front door. Yo, get off our property. Marcus looked toward him and laughed. Little man emotional. Andre stepped forward instantly. The atmosphere shifted so fast it felt physical. His voice stayed low. Don't talk to my son. Something about the way he said it made everybody pause. Even the birds seemed quieter. Marcus tried recovering his swagger. What you gonna do about it? Andre looked at him for a long second, then smiled slightly. And somehow, that smile felt more dangerous than yelling. You really want to know? Marcus glanced at his boys before puffing his chest out. One of them cracked his knuckles dramatically. Andre almost laughed. Amateurs. What Marcus didn't understand was this. Real dangerous people usually look ordinary. That's what keeps them alive. Marcus saw a calm suburban husband in a white T-shirt. He didn't see the man who once survived 16 hours, trapped behind enemy lines with a fractured rib and blood loss. He didn't see the operator trained to read body language faster than conversations. He didn't see the man whose nervous system still woke him up at 3 a.m. because part of his brain never left combat. Marcus saw softness because Andre chose peace. Big mistake. You know what Renee told me? Marcus said smugly. She said you ain't got no backbone. Andre looked toward Renee. For the first time, she couldn't hold eye contact, and that hurt more than the cheating, because betrayal is one thing. Public humiliation is another. Marcus smirked. She should have left you years ago. Andre nodded slowly. Maybe. That response confused everybody. Marcus frowned. You not mad? Andre looked around the neighborhood calmly. Curtains moving, neighbors watching, phones probably recording already. Then he looked back at Marcus. Nah, he said quietly. I just think you picked the wrong day to test me. One of Marcus's men stepped forward aggressively. Andre noticed the movement instantly. So did Jalen. Dad, go inside, Andre said without looking away. Jalen hesitated. Now, the authority in Andre's voice made him obey immediately. Marcus laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. You trying to act tough now? Andre tilted his head slightly. No. Then his expression changed completely. Cold, focused, sharp. The kind of face that didn't belong in suburban neighborhoods. It belonged somewhere worse. One of the men behind Marcus suddenly shifted nervously, because some instincts are universal. Real danger recognizes itself. Andre stepped closer, still calm, still quiet. But now Marcus could feel something changing underneath the surface. And for the first time since arriving, he looked uncertain. Then Andre said 7 words that made the entire driveway go silent. You should have asked what I did before retirement. Marcus blinked. What? Andre stared directly at him and smiled again. Not friendly this time. I think your boys already figured it out. Marcus slowly looked back at the 3 men behind him. None of them were smiling anymore. And that's when Renee realized the biggest mistake she had made wasn't cheating on her husband. It was forgetting who he really was. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The entire driveway felt frozen under the Texas heat. Even the neighborhood sounds faded into the background. Marcus looked over his shoulder at the 3 men he brought with him, expecting them to laugh, maybe step forward, maybe keep the performance alive. Instead, he saw hesitation, tiny shifts, eyes narrowing, postures changing, confidence leaking out, because men who spend their lives pretending to be dangerous usually panic when they meet somebody who doesn't need to pretend. Andre stood there in silence, white t-shirt slightly damp from washing the truck, water dripping slowly down the driveway. Nothing about him looked dramatic, and somehow that made him scarier. Marcus tried forcing a grin. Man, stop acting like you John Wick or something. Andre didn't react. One of the men behind Marcus finally spoke. You military? Andre glanced at him briefly. Navy. The man swallowed slightly. How long? Long enough. Short answer. Controlled answer. But something about it carried weight. Marcus laughed again, louder this time, trying to regain control. So what? You think because you was military everybody's supposed to be scared? Andre looked him directly in the eyes. No. Another pause. I think you brought strangers to my house to disrespect me in front of my family. And now you realizing nobody here actually knows how far this can go. That sentence landed differently, because suddenly this wasn't entertainment anymore. It felt unpredictable, and unpredictable people make everybody nervous. Renee stepped forward quickly. Okay, this getting out of hand. Andre looked at her calmly. No, it got out of hand before today. The words hit her harder than yelling would have, because deep down she knew he was right. This situation didn't begin in the driveway. It started months ago with small disrespectful comments, small humiliations, small betrayals she convinced herself didn't matter. Until now, Marcus shook his head. "You trying too hard to sound intimidating," Andre sighed softly. "That's the difference between me and you." Marcus frowned. "I don't gotta sound intimidating." The sentence was quiet, simple, and somehow that made Marcus uncomfortable. One of the three men, tall, beard, black hoodie, finally stepped back. Marcus, maybe we should bounce." Marcus snapped toward him. "What?" "I'm just saying." "Nah." Marcus pointed at Andre. "This dude been getting disrespected for years and suddenly want to act tough because he got a little military background." Andre's eyes hardened slightly. "Background?" The way he repeated the word made Marcus pause. Andre took one step closer. "I've missed funerals for that background." Another step. "I watched good men come home broken for that background." Another. "I spent years learning how to stay calm when people panic." Now Marcus wasn't smiling at all. Neither were his boys. Andre stopped moving. Then his voice lowered, "And the only reason this conversation's still peaceful is because my son inside that house." Nobody spoke. A dog barked somewhere down the street. A car rolled slowly past the neighborhood entrance. The world kept moving while tension sat heavy in that driveway. Then something unexpected happened. The shortest of Marcus's men looked directly at Andre and said quietly, "You seal?" Marcus turned sharply. "What?" Andre didn't answer immediately. But silence can be an answer, too. The man cursed under his breath. "Nah, I'm out." Marcus grabbed his arm. "Man, what's wrong with you?" The guy pulled away. "You ain't tell us all this." Andre almost felt bad for him. Almost. Because unlike Marcus, that man recognized survival instincts when he saw them. Marcus looked embarrassed now, humiliated. And humiliation is dangerous, especially for insecure men performing masculinity in front of other people. "You serious right now?" Marcus barked at his friends. The second man spoke carefully. "Bro, this ain't worth it." Marcus turned red. "So y'all scared?" Andre finally spoke again. No, everybody looked at him. "They smart." That sentence shattered whatever control Marcus had left. He rushed forward suddenly, shoving Andre hard in the chest. Renee screamed. Jalen appeared instantly at the front door. And then everything happened fast. Too fast for most people to understand. Andre didn't throw a punch, didn't yell, didn't posture. He simply moved. 1 second, Marcus was charging forward. The next second, he was face down against the hood of the Escalade, with his arm twisted behind his back so cleanly it looked effortless. Marcus screamed immediately, not dramatic movie screaming, real pain, real panic. Andre leaned close enough for only Marcus to hear. "You got lucky today." Marcus struggled wildly. Andre tightened pressure slightly. The man froze because now he understood something terrifying. Andre wasn't emotional. He was controlled. And controlled people are the hardest to predict. "You came here trying to embarrass me," Andre said quietly. "But you don't even understand the type of restraint I'm showing you right now." Marcus's breathing became uneven. The three men backed up completely now. Renee stood frozen beside the SUV, hands covering her mouth. She had never seen this version of her husband before. Not once. Because Andre spent years burying that side of himself. For her. For Jalen. For peace. And now she realized something painful. She mistook emotional discipline for weakness. Andre released Marcus suddenly. Marcus stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder in shock. Andre stepped away immediately. No celebration, no threats, no chest beating, just distance. Because unlike Marcus, he had nothing to prove. "You should leave," Andre said calmly. Marcus looked shaken now, angry too, but underneath the anger, fear, the dangerous illusion had broken. He wasn't standing in front of some defeated suburban husband anymore. He was standing in front of a man trained to remain calm under violence. Huge difference. "You think this over?" Marcus muttered. Andre stared at him. "I think you got a second chance." That sentence chilled everybody. Marcus looked around and finally noticed something he ignored earlier. Neighbors watching openly now. Phones recording. People whispering. His performance had failed publicly, and insecure men hate public failure. He pointed at Andre weakly. "This ain't done." But the confidence was gone. Andre didn't even answer. Marcus climbed into the Escalade, furiously, while his 3 men followed without speaking. The SUV peeled out of the driveway fast. Silence returned. Long silence. Then Jalen ran outside. "Dad!" Andre turned immediately. "You good?" Jalen looked at him like he was seeing him for the first time. "You really a Navy SEAL?" Andre rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "Former." Jalen blinked repeatedly. "Why you never told me?" Andre looked toward the house. "Some things I wanted to leave behind." Jalen stared at him with a mix of pride and confusion. Renee still hadn't spoken. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't know." Andre looked at her. "That's because you stopped trying to." The words cut deep. She looked away immediately. And for the first time in years, Renee looked small. Not financially, not socially, emotionally. Because reality had finally punched through the fantasy she built around herself. The flashy restaurants, the attention, the excitement, all of it suddenly looked shallow standing next to real strength. But by then, something important had already changed inside Andre. He wasn't fighting for the marriage anymore. That chapter had ended quietly, a long time ago. 3 days later, the neighborhood gossip exploded. Everybody had a version of the story. Some exaggerated it. Some got details wrong. But one fact stayed consistent. Marcus showed up trying to intimidate Andre and left humbled. Jalen heard kids at school talking about it nonstop. Oddly enough, that bothered Andre more than the confrontation itself, because he didn't want his son learning the wrong lesson. So that Friday night, he took Jalen fishing at Lake Louisville, just the 2 of them. The sky turned orange across the water while boats drifted slowly in the distance. Jalen finally broke the silence. "You could have seriously hurt him, huh?" Andre adjusted the fishing line calmly. "Yes." Jalen looked down. "Then why didn't you?" Andre smiled faintly. "Because strength ain't about what you can do." He looked out across the lake. "It's about what you choose not to do." Jalen stayed quiet. Andre continued. "When I was younger, I thought being a man meant dominating people, winning every fight, never backing down." He shook his head slowly. "That mindset almost destroyed me." The wind moved softly across the water. Andre rarely talked about his military years, not because he was ashamed, because some experiences stay too heavy for regular conversation. "You know what real dangerous men learn eventually?" he asked. Jalen shrugged. "That piece is expensive." Jalen frowned slightly. What that mean? It means calm people usually paid a price to become calm. That stayed with Jalen. Years later, he would still remember that sentence. Renee tried fixing things after Marcus disappeared. At first, it was subtle. Cooking Andre's favorite meals again. Trying to start conversations. Sitting closer on the couch. But the energy felt different now. Forced. Like somebody trying to save a building after the foundation already cracked. One night, she found Andre sitting alone on the back patio, staring into the dark. "You really done with us?" she asked softly. Andre didn't answer immediately. Crickets chirped nearby. A train horn echoed faintly in the distance. Finally, he spoke. "You know what hurt the most?" Renee looked down. "The cheating?" Andre shook his head. "No, that surprised her. You stopped seeing me as human." Her eyes filled slightly. Andre continued calmly. "You saw me struggling after the military, saw me trying to adjust, trying to be a father, trying to survive mentally." He looked at her. "And instead of asking what was wrong, you decided I was weak." Renee started crying quietly because there was truth in that. Painful truth. She spent so much time chasing excitement and appearances that she stopped appreciating stability, stopped appreciating safety, stopped appreciating the man who quietly carried the emotional weight of their entire household. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Andre nodded once. "I know, but forgiveness and repair are different things. And sometimes people realize value only after they damage it beyond recovery." Marcus never came back. In fact, Andre later heard the man moved differently after that day. Quieter, less reckless, less eager to perform. Toughness. Because fear can teach lessons, pride never will. As for Andre, he changed too, not into some revenge-driven alpha fantasy, into honesty. He finally started therapy through a veterans program he'd avoided for years. He opened up more to Jalen, started mentoring younger veterans, adjusting to civilian life, even began coaching football again at the local community center. Slowly, he rebuilt parts of himself he buried after service. And the strangest part, losing his marriage forced him to confront truths he'd avoided for years. He realized survival and living were not the same thing. One keeps you breathing. The other requires vulnerability. 6 months later, Andre sat in folding bleachers watching Jalen's basketball game. Parents screamed from the stands. Sneakers squeaked across polished floors. Somebody sold nachos near the entrance. Ordinary life. Beautiful life. Jalen jogged over after the game, sweaty and smiling. "You coming to the team barbecue Saturday?" Andre nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." Jalen grinned, then hesitated. "Dad?" "Yeah? I'm glad you didn't become bitter." Andre looked at his son carefully. "Me too." Because bitterness would have been easy. Easy after betrayal. Easy after humiliation. Easy after years of carrying pain silently. But Andre finally understood something most people learn too late. Pain can either sharpen wisdom or poison your spirit. The choice matters. As the gym emptied slowly around them, Andre looked up at the crowd of families, conversations, laughter, ordinary chaos. And for the first time in years, he felt peaceful. Not because he proved himself to Marcus, not because people respected him now, but because he no longer needed validation from people who confused loudness with strength. Sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals the version of yourself that's been waiting underneath. survival mode all along. If this story made you see things differently, let me know. And don't forget to subscribe to Secret Tales.